Thank you very much for joining me on this Monday. I'm meteorologist Brian Shields. A couple things I want to go over first. We have this system here. That is Nicole. Does look like, as we've been talking about, it will become a hurricane. My friends in the United States, I always keep an eye on us in the United States, but of course I focus on the Caribbean in this channel. This channel is for safety. If you're in Central Florida, for example, that's actually where I live. I want to point out a couple resources. WFTV, Channel 9, and we're going to break things down for you on there, and WFTV.com. If you live in a different area and you want to see the coverage from the States, again, WFTV.com, there'll be a lot of live streaming. So I did want to point that out. So I know I don't dive as deep into things in Florida, but I do, of course, on the TV side with my good friends Tom and such. Now, let's get a look elsewhere. I also want to point out St. Lucia. I have family from St. Lucia, and I'm thinking of you in St. Lucia. We were talking about the last few days. We're going to see some very heavy amounts of rain, and all islands matter, small and large. And with that, small or large, and with that, sometimes you get huge differences across the Caribbean. Some spots get nothing, others get dumped on, and unfortunately, we had devastating flooding in St. Lucia yesterday. Not just cars underwater, we had homes underwater. I want you to know I'm thinking about you. Thank you for leaving those comments. It's good to know you are safe, so I appreciate that. Thinking of you in St. Lucia today, of course, and beyond. Now, what we have going on, let me reset the stage here. Let me flip over back to this. We get a look at the satellite here. I want to put it on a loop for you, and you see here this big swirl. It's a subtropical storm right now. That just means it's broader in nature. The core of it isn't as well defined, or the winds aren't as strong at the core yet. But here, the tail end of this, look at this. And this was part of the issue in St. Lucia yesterday. In the Dominican Republic a couple days ago, you see all of the bands of rain wrapping in, and still in the sector watching Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands over toward Anguilla, Antigua, Barbuda, St. Kitts and Nevis, Montserrat for some of that heavier rain. And then you get to the north, while this system is mainly to the east of the Bahamas, those winds are whipping around, and we already have the flooding in parts of the Bahamas, the low-lying areas. Now, of course, we're generally low-lying all across the Bahamas, but those areas that take on water quicker, they are already doing so all across the Bahamas, and again, watching through the Turks and Caicos. But watching this blob of rain here very carefully, very big downpours on that. We could see easily 50 to 100 millimeters of rain, so that's about 2 to 4 inches plus in spots. And then you get through here, Colombia, even near the ABC Islands, Panama, and Costa Rica. I've been watching this slug of moisture that we've had for a while. And then you get back through Trinidad and Tobago, there's more rain around, watching parts of Venezuela, Guyana, Suriname. It's been active, especially along the coast of Guyana and Suriname with the rain and storm. So let's get into Nicole for a second. Again, more details, head to WFTV.com for that in Florida, breaking down the surge and all that sort of thing. But let me show you what we're seeing here with a bit of a focus on the Bahamas here. Here's this system. Winds right now at about 47 miles per hour. Winds at about 45 to 50 right now. Moving generally off to the west. It'll move a little bit to the north and back to the southwest, and then a landfall in Florida. And in the northern Bahamas, it should become a hurricane. So near Nassau and, say, Freeport, hurricane conditions, northern Bahamas down the road, a Category 1 hurricane. Shouldn't have any rapid strengthening because it's subtropical in nature first, but there will be some strengthening. Very warm water here. All the computer models in that very strong agreement of making a landfall right into the northern Bahamas or close to it. But that's why those hurricane conditions are more and more likely across the northern Bahamas. Ignore these models. Not all the models are the same. We talk about that often. But again, this will work right into the northern Bahamas. Now, it's subtropical. That means a broader wind field on this. So the tropical storm force winds are very large, and with that brings in the flooding. Bigger wind field brings in the flooding. Hang on, let me take away this for a second. I want to show you the watches and warnings. So let's get down those, and you can see here, these are in the orange here, these are hurricane watches that are now up for the Bahamas, not tropical storm watches. And again, even hurricane watches for parts of Florida at this time, the blue tropical storm watches. All right, this is the wind field. Look how expansive it is. That blue shading, those are the tropical storm force winds. And in here, stronger winds even than that. And once it gets into the Bahamas, we're looking at some hurricane conditions, and that could spill over into Florida. But a huge wind field, and that means a lot of coastal flooding in spots. So let's get into that. Let's get into the models. This is the American model, and the models, as I've been mentioning, have been right on track with this. In the American model's been doing the best this season of picking up on systems. European model's been doing better on the track, like with Ian, but they're all generally showing the same thing. Now, in the Caribbean here, this is what we're watching. The system's up here, and of course, I was just highlighting the Bahamas, but we're still going to see some rain and storms today, say St. Kitts and Nevis, down to the south, more in the way of scattered showers. Still a chance of some rain in St. Lucia. Hopefully it's more of the passing variety if we do get it. Some shower storms could bubble up over toward the ABC Islands. This is tomorrow, and you see here the worst weather starting to edge into the northern and central Bahamas. Now, southern Bahamas and back through the Turks and Caicos, not as much. But the flooding still a potential, not as much as far as the rain is concerned. But again, those seas are cranking up. And then you see here, this will be working in as we get into Wednesday night, right through the northern Bahamas with an initial landfall of the system, at least potentially of that. Not sure which part, but overall, the northern parts, a landfalling, a strong tropical storm or hurricane late Wednesday night into very early Thursday. And then again, the focus will go into Florida and then even up toward back through Georgia. My colleagues will be handling that up through the Carolinas. So you can see the progression of the system may cross over a little bit. I don't see anything that brings this back toward Louisiana. I know we have a lot of subscribers from Mississippi here. Nothing like that, but it could kind of hook back. But you see this. Watching that. Again, another little resurgence of more rain. The active November continues. Not seeing anything down the road organized there, but just showing that we're still dealing with some rain and storms. Now, as far as the European model goes, pretty much the same as far as the track is concerned as the American model, but it doesn't quite bring it to hurricane status. It would be a strong tropical storm, high impacts through the Bahamas, especially the northern and central Bahamas with that flooding, and then eventually into Florida. So that's the European model on track with what we're seeing with the American model. And then you get to the Canadian model. That brings it a little bit more to the north, but still a Category 1 hurricane. Goes from a tropical storm to a Category 1 hurricane in the northern Bahamas, and that would bring a landfall a little bit more to the north along the Space Coast of Florida. All right, getting forward as we take a look at the steering conditions. Now, we have a couple things going on. First, a high pushes it west, and then a front is going to pull it north. So you see the system here. These systems as a whole want to go poleward. They want to lift up to the north, but there's an area of high pressure blocking it. So it can't go to the north. Winds around that are clockwise, so it kind of grabs it. It almost helps steer it, and then right back to the west into the Bahamas. That's why it's not going to scoot out to sea. This area of high pressure blocks it and then kind of pulls it into the Bahamas. And then eventually, once it gets, say, to Florida, a front comes in and kind of pulls it back to the north. So that's why it's kind of taking a little bit of a funky path. I wanted to show you what I'm seeing with the environmental conditions and the steering conditions. So in the Bahamas, all across the Bahamas, 700 islands plus, have that chance of the flooding. Winds are going to be whipping around in different directions. Even if you're not in the core of this system, that potential is there of coastal flooding. But of course, the northern zones making those hurricane preps around Nassau and Freeport for that potential. Very strong winds, and again, some flooding with this system. I'm not seeing anything that is showing it rapidly intensifying, but it should go from a tropical storm to at least close to hurricane status. As far as the additional rain is concerned, you still see some of these brighter colors. Look over toward the Virgin Islands today, both the U.S. and British Virgin Islands over toward Anguilla, right on the edge of Antigua. We could see some spots getting 100 millimeters of rain. That's about 4 inches of additional rain. So I'm going to keep an eye on that flooding across the Caribbean. And then as you get into the northern Bahamas, very close to some spots, upwards of 150 millimeters of rain. So then you're measuring the rain upwards of half a feet right on the edge of that over toward the northern Bahamas. Water temperatures still conducive for it to go from a subtropical storm to a tropical storm, 27 to about 30 degrees Celsius. Again, not as warm as the summertime, plenty warm enough, especially near the coast. And look at the seas, and this is what I was talking about, the wave heights. These wave heights are in feet offshore of the Bahamas, 24 to 25 feet plus. Could see some seas upwards of about 30 feet. So as far as the waves are concerned, I should clarify that. So about 30 feet, which is that's about 7 to 8 meters. So about 7 to 8 meters in some sections. So that is really cranking up, and that's why there's that high concern of coastal issues all the way up really through even the Carolinas as those seas build, as this system gets stronger. So Nicole, that is the next name, and that is what we have right now. So please be safe out there. Again, thinking of you in St. Lucia with some of the devastation we had in spots. My thoughts are with you throughout the day. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you have a good day ahead.